Hopefully lighting is good. Looks like you're... I'm going to turn the lighting down a little bit over on this side.
Something just came up in your screen. I can't read it.
See if that's a little bit better. Okay, you should be able to find the channel now on yours.
I have upcoming event.
Yeah. Live. Why don't you, if you can kind of watch to see who's coming up live, let me just go ahead and do this.
Get your finger on the screen, otherwise it will go out if there's segment again.
Okay. I'm going to see how you can look at chat.
I have to go all the way down to the bottom of your list.
I don't think so. Hi everyone, we're going live in just a minute. Bear with us for just a second here. Let me see if I can go in here. Whoops. It's right there. Hopefully it comes up with a screen right here where we can see everybody in.
So mine doesn't work though?
I don't think so. So we can follow along here. And what you can do is do this. And I'm going to turn the volume down here real quick. There we go.
Where am I following?
How does this look, everybody? You can follow the chat here. Okay. And you can go ahead and read off if somebody joins. How does it look so far, everyone?
Angie's there, Matt's there, Ryan's there. You're already live. We know, Angie. Thank you.
Lighting good? Sound good?
Somebody's in French coming through. Brady's there. Angie says we're good.
Good.
Brady said good. Barb says good.
All of our wonderful Christmas decorations behind us is hidden by my big head. So
everything's good.
What time are we at?
Matt, Exotics. You got your shout out. Your shout out.
Hey Matt. How are we doing for time?
It is 6:30, right on the dot.
Well,
AJ, welcome.
Well, let's go ahead and start then. What do you want? You want to just like this? Sure. Just hold this down and hit the tab. Just hold that down and hit the tab. As you can tell, we don't do many live sessions, so I appreciate everybody hanging in there with us. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll get into the main subject in just a minute. We'll let everybody kind of get involved in the session, join the session. But I wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, wonderful holidays. I hope yours is going to be as wonderful as ours is going to be. Thank you everyone for participating in the giveaway. If you've left questions and comments to the different videos, thank you very much. That's what means so much to this channel and keeps it growing and doing well. We've done extremely well this year. We've grown so much. I appreciate everybody's support. I can't say that enough. Why don't we go ahead and start with the questions. So we're going to be doing, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. So we're going to be doing 2 giveaways in just a few minutes. Hang in there. I hope you enjoyed these questions and answers from one of our videos, and hopefully learn a little bit about ourselves and about Supreme Gecko and about the geckos and isopods that we keep. So we'll do those giveaways in just a minute. So go ahead.
Okay, Glenn Cannon would like to know, I would like a video showing which species would work with different geckos for bioactive habitats.
I can do that. That's more of a point, a question if we could do something, but I can do that. Sounds good.
Okay, Tavian's World of Reptiles.
Hey, Tavian.
How did your parents support your love for insects as you were growing up?
Dude, my parents, I didn't really get into insects really until about 2 years ago, but that love for insects kind of grew from a love for fishing and keeping fish, keeping tropical fish, keeping orchids, and then finally reptiles, and then finally isopods. But my parents really appreciated and supported my, look into nature and keeping different things, going down to the pond, coming back with bowls full and coffee cans full of tadpoles and crayfish. They didn't really mind that at all with these different things in the garage sitting there.
Vanessa G, her husband wants to know, how long have you had your mustache?
So I did say you can make it personal or about the geckos or about isopods. So great question, Vanessa. How long have I had my mustache?
You've had your mustache as long as I've known you.
And never cut it off?
Not your mustache. Your beard you did, but not your mustache.
Okay.
Vanessa herself wants to know, I want to know if you personally have any non-gecko pets.
Non-gecko pets. Hold on just a minute. Let's see if I can have somebody answer that question for us. Gus, what's outside? Is there a squirrel outside? Gus, who's at the door? Who's it? Shh. Who's it? Who is it? That's our dog, Gus. Good boy. Good boy.
He's a corgi, very little, so you won't be able to see him in this video. Abigail would like to know, was Nanette interested in reptiles when you met her? I feel I haven't found a significant other yet because I haven't found one to enjoy my love for reptiles. Trying to figure it out if I can convert someone or if I need to find a reptile lover.
Isn't there a site, Gecko Tinder out there at all?
Gecko Match.
Gecko Match or something? GeckoMatch.com. So you want to answer that?
I was not into reptiles at all when we first started to date, and probably not until the last 15 years or so did I get involved with any of them.
And actually, when we got married, I was really into my career, and I started keeping tropical fish. Kept tropical fish for, I don't know, probably 20 years, and then got out of tropical fish, kept orchids, got out of that, got into reptiles. So it's only been the last 20 years that I've really been into reptiles.
You can convert somebody as well to like reptiles, to a limit.
Let them handle a crested gecko.
Yes,
that'll convert them real quick.
Okay. AJ would like to know, I'm really interested in the business side of Supreme Gecko. Which isopod species is your best seller? Based on your margins and sales, which one is your biggest moneymaker?
It's kind of funny, but when we do the shows and sales online, a blatant plug, you can go to Supreme Gecko to see the isopods that we have on sale. But when we sell at shows and online, it's usually people looking for a bioactive environment. So right now, powder blues, powder oranges are our very best sellers. We're selling a lot of the, starter isopods. We've just started selling dairy cows and others like that. So I would say some of the basic isopods would be a great starter isopod for a business, to start a business.
Crystal's Pets and Plants wants to know what your favorite types of isopods are and why.
Hi, Crystal. I would say my favorite isopod, because of the color, is probably Porcellio ornatus high yellow. I just love the high yellow. My Supreme Isopod logo is based on the Porcellio ornatus high yellow.
Itty Bitty Ladybug Lisa wants to know what my favorite isopod is.
So what is
That's
your
a
favorite
hard one.
isopod?
I would say I like the yellow dot because I think it's cool that it's dark and then it's got the 3 little or 4 dots sitting on the back. There's just too many down there to pick, but that's the first one that came to mind.
From the previous question, that was from Crystal's question. And hi, Crystal, if you're watching. From Crystal's question, I was going to say Ornatus yellow dot as well because they're very, very active.
Aaron would like to know, have you spent any time trying to crossbreed any of your isopods? If so, can you tell us about your success or your failure in that?
I've started that. I took a cue from Russ Wilson from Aquarimax, and he started breeding Lavis, Porcelio Lavis, orange, and dairy cows. And I did the same thing. And the results are usually you get orange or you get dairy cows, and I'm starting to get some wild types. So I'm going to isolate those separately and bring them back to dairy cows and bring them back to orange, and hopefully we'll see what we can get. From my red skirts, I've started to get some white angels. I'm starting to play around a little bit with that in the isopods. I find that just fascinating. So I'm getting more into getting some of these morphs going.
Okay. Evan would like to know, he said he'd definitely like to see a video on my favorite gecko. And what kind of work did you do before you did full-time geckos, Wally?
Well, recently I semi-retired about a year and a half ago. And before that, I was a project manager for an IT department. It was a fun job. It just got to the point where I really wanted to pursue this, the geckos and the isopods. Before you read the next question, can you go over to YouTube and maybe check? Let me just do that real quick. Yep. And just maybe make sure that there's any comments or questions.
Are you answering questions we ask now or for the previous video commented questions? Angie, we're not answering anything live for you, but anybody else can ask a live question.
Angie, if you have a question, answer it, and we'll go ahead and or ask it, and we'll go ahead and answer it.
Just kidding.
Any other points?
No. Did you or your wife have any reptiles or amphibians when you were growing up? Cassandra wants to know.
I did not. The only thing that I had was a fish tank. So I kept, as I was such a huge fisherman when I was growing up, I kept a fish tank with bass and bluegills in it.
Liz Rasper said she had a corgi named Gus too.
Oh my gosh,
that's
is
too
that
funny.
Crazy. There's a lot of corgi keepers out there if you look at on Facebook.
B. Fusco saying, hey people, just saying this is fun.
I would agree.
Do you keep any other species of leopard geckos, subspecies?
I don't keep any of the other species of leopard geckos. I just have the standard normal leopard gecko, but I have a lot of different morphs. I probably have 5 or 6 morphs. I've restricted my leopard gecko keeping down to probably around, I would say, 20 pairs, groups. I was crazy into it about 5 years ago, and I think we produced 400 or 500 babies at that time. It was too much, and now I focus on the leopard gecko morphs that I really, really enjoy.
One more question just came in from Fusion H22. Is it easy to breed Tropicalates?
Tropicalates. It really is. The biggest requirement for them, it's a micro gecko. They're very, very, very small. The biggest requirement is you need the heat, you need the sand, you need the hiding places. It's one of my favorite geckos because we just fed them just about an hour ago. They come out and they eat. They're very friendly. They're not shy at all. The biggest requirement is you have to have the right food for them. You have to have small food. Even for the adults, you have to have fruit flies, dwarf whites, or springtails. You have to have something very, very, very small. And the babies, if you can imagine, the adults are only about 1.5 inches, so the babies are teeny tiny. You have to have springtails or something small for them.
Okay.
Let's take one more question, then we'll jump back over to
Okay, I have a question from Angie.
Yeah.
Will you ever breed snakes?
Nope.
No.
Oh. I jumped on that probably as quick as you did.
No.
So my wife told me years and years ago when I started keeping reptiles, I could keep reptiles, but they had to stay down in the basement. Well, that rule kind of broke pretty quick because we have day geckos upstairs. We've had geckos upstairs on the main floor for several years. But her other big rule, and I know this is something that I can't break, is that if I ever brought a snake in the house, she would leave. She would take the credit card. So, and the dog. So now it's the dog too. So that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and jump back over.
All right. There was a question, a comment about my favorite gecko. That would be a Pictus gecko. So at some point you'll have to do that. I like the personality. Beely's Pets. The perfect gecko for Christmas would be great to know. If I think a lot of people would also like to know. So when first getting isopod, when I first got into isopods, I'm sorry, I read two questions there. Perfect gecko for Christmas would be great to know. I think of a lot of people would like to know that.
I think that's a great question to throw out to the chat right now. Anybody keeping geckos, what do you think would be a perfect gecko to give as a gift for Christmas? I know I have my answer, but let's see what everybody says in the chat. Go ahead and add your thoughts on anybody that keeps geckos. Add your thoughts, and I'll come back to that in just a minute.
Edward Adams wanted to know, when I first started keeping isopods, it was as CUC. Now it's more collecting than hiring them as labor. Do you consider them more a cleaner or a pet?
And CUC means cleanup crew. I consider them, because I don't really do a lot of bioactive enclosures right now. I do a handful. So I consider them more as a pet. There's several different reasons for keeping isopods, but for me, I've said this before, they're more like Beanie Babies. It's more of a collectible than anything. Just love breeding them and seeing babies.
D. Johnson wants to know how you got started in geckos and isopods, and did isopods just start out as your CUC, or did they start out as a pet?
I'll start with the isopods. They did start out as cleanup crews. I got some dwarf whites. I introduced them into some cave gecko enclosures, and then I started keeping a couple of others. This was probably 5 years ago when isopods were just starting to catch fire. And a close friend of mine tried to convince me that some of these isopods were valued more than 50 cents a piece, or 54 $5, like the dwarf whites. He tried to convince me some of these were valued at $2 or $3 or $10 a piece. Couldn't understand that whatsoever. Now that I've gotten into the hobby, I completely understand why some are more valuable than 50 cents a piece. For geckos, I really can't. Oh, I know why I got into geckos. I got into geckos because I took a trip to Los Angeles because I was into fish at the time. I found a friend of mine. I stopped by his aquarium shop, and he had a full size, floor to ceiling, 4 foot by 4 foot cage with Jackson chameleons in there. Just love that enclosure. So years later, when I got out of fish, I wanted to get into reptiles. I got chameleons first. I started with chameleons, and because they required crickets, I thought, well, I could keep a pair of leopards. Well, that pair of leopards turned into dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of crusteds, and then my love for the exotic geckos as well.
House of Invertebrates wants to know, what are isopods used for?
I actually have a video for that. I think it was about 3 months ago, but basically they're cleanup crew. You can keep them, like I just mentioned, as more of a collectible. You can keep them for a business. They're just such a hot selling item right now. You can keep them as a feeder. I feed several of my geckos isopods. You'd be surprised. And they take them fairly regularly. I'm trying to think of other reasons to keep isopods, but go ahead and check out that video. I think it was about 3 months ago. Yep.
They also want to know what kind of music you listen to.
Oh, what kind of music do I listen to? Let's see if you...
All kinds. You listen to Led Zeppelin.
Zeppelin.
You listen to... I'm trying to think of all the names. AC/DC.
A little bit.
To I don't know what else.
Music, yeah, some of the
Early
contemporary rock and roll, Zeppelin, Leonard Skinner, Pink Floyd. I love Pink Floyd, but then again, I also listen to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, things like that too. So, and if I'm not listening to that, I'm listening to contemporary Christian, something different, something more soothing. But if I'm down in the Gecko room, it's awkward for me to do videos because I normally have the radio blasting AC/DC or something down there.
Richard would like to know wild caught isopods, pros and cons. Your thoughts?
Wild caught, the pro absolutely is. It's an introduction into isopods. When I first started, I bought a few, probably 3 or 4 different cultures, but I went out and caught wild caught, and it's just a great experience. It gives you that feel for how to keep isopods, and the colors that you can actually find in the wild are outstanding. The con is that you can bring in a lot of other stuff. So make sure that if you're collecting wood and leaves and other things with the isopods. I mean, I remember bringing in isopods initially, and I had some ants in the culture that I had to take care of. And with the isopods that I initially brought in, I actually had a small millipede, a kind of a furry millipede that bred and really produced well. So I isolated that out. But just be aware that you could bring in some contaminants in with the some hitchhikers in with the wild isopods.
You might have answered this one. Dale Delator wants to know how long you've been breeding geckos and isopods and what got you started or interested.
I'm sorry, isopods?
Isopods or geckos?
Geckos about 20 years. I think we're rolling right around 20 years right now, rolling up to 20 years. Isopods, I've only been breeding them for about a year. I would say about a year and a half. That's about it.
Lord K. Python wants to know how do you determine how much ventilation is best for the different species of your isopods?
Tricky. That's probably that, and moisture, balancing the ventilation with the moisture is probably the trickiest thing I think with isopods. Maybe somebody will disagree. Food is food, but balancing that ventilation and the moisture. So what I recommend is add as much ventilation as you possibly can. Dwarf whites, springtails, they don't need as much ventilation, but for the other isopods, if you can maintain them every other day, add as much ventilation as you possibly can. I don't think that it hurts adding more ventilation, other than it dries out the culture a little bit quicker, so you have to maintain them more frequently. So that's the balance with keeping sphagnum moss on one side and making sure that you have that wet area, that moist area for the isopods. Why don't we take one more off of this and we'll jump back over.
Okay.
And
Brandon Fowler wants to know what was your first reptile you owned and what is the ultimate reptile that you want to own?
That's a great question. I get that asked a lot. My first reptile was chameleons. Started with chameleons, actually with veiled chameleons. And it was shortly after that I bought a pair of leopard geckos and had them for a year, bred them, and then it just exploded. I remember going on an auction site on Urban Gecko and purchasing, oh my gosh, lots of very expensive geckos back, again, probably 15, 16, 17 years ago. Leopard geckos were my first gecko, and chameleons were my first chameleon. Or my first reptile.
Okay, bump us back.
Okay, let's jump over to YouTube just real quick and see if there's some questions here. I know we're missing probably quite a bit here with the YouTube. What do you think?
How often do you feed your pygmy panther geckos and how often do you supplement their food?
I have a routine. That's a really good question. I have a routine where for the Picta geckos, I feed them. Just got a message here. I feed the Picta about every other day. In the winter, it's every third day. We supplement every feeding, but I also have a food dish, a mealworm cup in there that I add the calcium and vitamin mix in, and they have access to that all the time. But basically, it's about every third day in the wintertime and every other day during spring, summer, and fall.
Then there's, what do you think about hybrid lizards?
Ooh, I'm probably on the far left on hybrids. I'm just not a fan of hybrids. I know that there's some beautiful crested Chihuahua breeds out there. I don't know. They're beautiful animals. I just go back to my fish keeping days, and I used to keep, if anybody knows what a tropheus is, I used to keep tropheus, and they were very, very separate in the different locations, actually in the lake. Not just the species, but the location in the lake. So whenever I can, and this is true with isopods, and it's also true with geckos to a point, whenever I can, I try to include the location, not just the genus and species name, but also the location to keep everything as straight and clean as I possibly can. If somebody wants to breed, something like a Chihuahua and a crested gecko and get that animal, that's great, as long as they label it and as long as they're perfectly clear that that animal won't then breed to other animals.
Hi, DEA Exotics. They just jumped in a few minutes ago.
Hey, Andrew.
Another question. Will you be doing a video on how you get wild picked mushrooms ready for feeding and where you pick them from?
I can do that. That's from Andrew?
That's from Angie.
That's from Angie.
Andrew said hi.
Hi, Andrew. Angie, I have some secret places that I just can't divulge where I get my mushrooms. So, funny story. The truth is that Angie gets all of my mushrooms. She goes out and does some beautiful nature walks all over the place, and she comes to my house with this box of mushrooms. So I can do a video on how we prepare them, certainly. Let's take one more and then we'll jump back.
And jump over.
Okay, ready? Do we have a kind of a consensus on what the starter gecko is?
No,
Okay, I'm gonna jump back over. You can read the next
Okay.
question. Then I'll get back to that good gecko for a Christmas gift.
Okay, Gary Orner wants to know, other than animals, what is something that you like to do in your downtime?
What do I do in my downtime?
Watch the History Channel,
That's one.
spend time with me.
That's two.
No, sleep. No, I'm
Sleep.
just kidding.
A lot of
He
sleeping.
doesn't have a lot of downtime.
That's probably it. I guess the one kind of hobby outside of geckos that I have is fantasy sports. So I like to do the fantasy baseball. So come springtime, I'm doing the worksheets in Excel and reading, and I'm up at 11:30 at night looking at Twitter for the latest player movements, and so it's all fantasy baseball in the springtime. And then after I realize that I have a last place team in fantasy baseball, then I bail and I get back into the geckos.
So Tyler, you asked what his favorite sport was. It's baseball. Spends a lot of time with it. Jason, what is the most difficult species that you've worked with, and what made it so difficult?
Most difficult species. So I'll mention to everybody that's joining the chat right now, the live stream, thank you very much again for all of your support. Hit that like button if you wouldn't mind. That's what really drives this channel and really helps benefit the channel a lot. We're going to do a giveaway. Let's do maybe, where are we at right now? Let's do maybe a couple more questions, and then we're going to do the fan appreciation giveaway. That's where I counted all the comments from this last year, and I picked 3 names, and we'll give a $100 gift certificate out for the fan appreciation giveaway. And then after a few more questions, then we'll give the fan participation giveaway gift out. What's the question again? What's the most?
What was the most difficult species? And why?
The funny thing is that I have really, really, really struggled with African fat tails. There's been other species that I've worked with that I haven't bred, but African fat tails, I've gotten, I can't tell you how many eggs. I bet you I've produced hundreds of eggs, and I've only had one baby hatch out. So I kind of look at the pairs that I brought in initially and work with them, and I think that there might have been some issues with those pairs. But African fat tails have been my most challenging, I guess, gecko that I've worked with.
Okay, here's a couple questions that are more personal.
Yeah. Oh,
One of them would be, what is the worst Christmas gift you've ever given your wife? What do you think it was?
What's the worst Christmas gift? Oh, knowing that I have no taste in Christmas. You actually one day we were out shopping and you said, "Boy, it would be nice if I had one of those." And to this day, I still can't remember that. And I probably that Christmas I bought you a vacuum cleaner or something. Yeah, that's
Yes, I
pretty
did
close.
get a vacuum. Yeah, pretty close.
Vacuum cleaner.
Mm-hmm. DEA Exotics says, I get my hand slapped a lot this time of year because of the cookies. Question number one, what's your favorite cookie that your wife makes for the holidays?
Yes. My favorite cookie is probably oatmeal. You make so many though. Spritz are really good. Oatmeal. She makes an orange from Tang, an orange cookie that's really good too.
This is another me question.
Your
Is
question?
your wife pushy? Let's see how he answers this one.
Is my wife pushy? No, she certainly is not. Are you pushy?
I don't think I'm pushy.
I don't think she is at all. No, Nanette works with special need kids at school. She's a Sunday school director. She has the patience of a saint. Angie, does Nanette have the patience of a saint working with me? Yes, no, she's not pushy at all.
Angie has a question here. This is for the wife also. How, with lots of question marks and exclamation, how has she remained with you for so long?
This is like the Angie show now. Angie is a close friend. She lives near us and visits often. So how have you tolerated me over all of these years?
I just love you. You're fun. Your personality is great. We have a good time together. We can read each other very well. Okay. Where do you live? Jonas Schwartz wants to know that.
I just live just west of, should I divulge this information?
Not
I live
really
just
detailed.
west of Milwaukee in a town called Sussex.
Okay.
In the computer.
Oh, sorry.
Do one more question
Yeah,
and then we'll.
I'm going to go back to a.
Okay. Then we'll jump over to YouTube and answer a couple of questions there.
What are you doing for what are you doing for your next video? You and your wife crack me up, and I want a gecko for Christmas. That came from Shirley.
Hi, Shirley. Thanks for supporting the channel. I know you do quite a bit. What am I doing for my next video? I actually, this is kind of funny, but I use crusted gecko diet dishes. They're a little, kind of a squat dish, and it makes no sense that anybody would watch a video involving, a dish. It doesn't, have much fascination, I don't think, with anybody. So I need to figure out a way to make it fascinating and exciting and thrilling and out of a dish, out of a feeder dish. But I just love these dishes. It's changed the way that we feed. And I'm putting together a video right now to try to somehow make it a little bit, I guess, exciting.
You want to flip back over?
We're going to do maybe one question from YouTube here. And then we'll pick a name.
Somebody says put sushi in your dishes.
They're a condiment. Actually, they are a condiment dish.
Can you buy mushrooms from a store for your isopods? Can you buy them from I would assume he's asking like grocery store.
I would think so. I wouldn't do that simply because, they're so easy to collect. They really, really are easy to collect. Anytime you go out into, the woods looking for isopods or decaying wood or just taking a hike, you're going to find mushrooms. And I've had great luck. The firmer they are, the better they are. So I just would suggest not to. They're so expensive. You can go online and buy mushrooms. There's a couple of good sites food sites. I can't think of one right now, but beans.com. But it's so much more expensive. Just grab the mushrooms, bring them in, let them dry out. You can cook them 250 for 20 minutes or so, and then just shave them off and feed them to your isopods. It's that easy.
Megan Schmidt wants to know how often you hang out with Crystal.
Hi, Megan. Well, Crystal is our granddaughter from our son Jordan, And Crystal and Jordan actually lived here until about a month ago, and Jordan got his new apartment. And Crystal and Jordan are living in Waukesha, which is about 20 minutes away from us or so. And Crystal comes over every day to grab the school bus. So I'm blessed that I see Crystal just about every single day. So I spend as much time, talking about spare time. What do I do with my spare time? It's a lot of family time, to be honest. Let's go ahead and do a drawing. You can read that off, and let's do a drawing.
Somebody wants to know what the drawing is.
Let me explain the two giveaways that we're doing, and we're going to do one right now. The first one is a fan appreciation, and I counted all the comments from our 2019 videos from everybody, and did a count, and did a video actually about 5 or 6 videos prior to this, just about 2 weeks ago, and a thank you video, and acknowledged kind of a shout out of some of the names. And we had 3 people that contributed to just about every single video that we did. And those names, and Nanette's going to write them right now on a piece of paper, throw that piece of paper in a hat, and we're going to pick one. That giveaway is for a $100 gift certificate to Supreme Gecko. And the names are Zach Miller. You got that?
Mm-hmm.
The other name is Primetime Gecko. I'm just going by their YouTube names. And the other is Juan Demlinus. I'm sure I'm killing that name. And if I am, my apologies, Juan. Juan's a great friend of mine. So let's do that giveaway right now.
This is when we needed Crystal.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to kind of stir them up a little bit in the hat. The second giveaway is based off of the questions from the last 7 videos that we did. And I put all of those questions, I counted all the questions per person, put them into a spreadsheet. So if you contributed to every single one of the 7 videos, you're getting counted 7 times. If you added 1 comment to one of the videos, you get counted once. And we'll do a drawing for that in just a few minutes.
Juan said you did great pronouncing his name.
Thanks, Juan. I'm sure I didn't.
Should see the way he spelled it. Just kidding.
Spelling's not a skill of mine by any means. Okay, pick a name. Drum roll, please. And the winner is
Zach Miller.
Zach Miller. So I'll be contacting you on this gift certificate, Zach Miller, and you'll be entitled to a $100 gift certificate to Supreme Gecko.
Somebody likes your hat.
This is the
Not
Chicago.
that hat.
Oh, my hat. Maybe I should wear this for a couple of videos. Let's go ahead. Are there any more?
Yeah, you have a question that you get to answer. Liz wants to know, what is your advice for a successful marriage, and how long have you been married?
So I'll let Nanette answer the second question. 37 years? No, 38,
Lower.
36, 35 years. Right off the bat. 35 years. Success in our marriage is, that everybody says don't go to bed angry. I think Nanette tolerates my shortcomings, and on the other hand, Nanette doesn't have any shortcomings. So, it's an easy balance that way. We really do work things out. If we see that we have a problem, it doesn't last for more than a day. It really doesn't. We make sure that our discipline with our kids, was absolutely the same. And if we had differences, we talked to each other, off, away from the kids, and made sure that we were consistent with the things that we were doing. I've always felt, it's a case of lose the battle but win the war. So small things, let them go, but make sure that if you have fundamental beliefs and a foundation, you have to stick to that.
Good job. Mr.
35 years.
35
Seems
years.
so much longer than that.
It does. Mr. Grindler's creature says, hey, how are things going, man?
Doing good. Doing great.
All right, That's all I had.
Okay, let's go ahead and jump over.
Stop while you're ahead, somebody said with your conversation. Smart. You must want something really good for Christmas. All right. If you could own one and only one isopod, what would it be?
I would have to go back to wild ornatus, Porcella ornatus. High yellow is my favorite, especially with the colors. I'd probably go back to Porcella ornatus yellow dot for my one isopod that I would keep. They're just so active. They're always out, easy breeder, easy to maintain. Just a fun isopod.
Jennifer would like to know what's the most challenging part of keeping an animal business going.
With any business, I think it's, especially when it's, a one person, or in our case, two person, it's finding time, prioritizing your time. I have to spend the time with the geckos, but people don't realize with a business like this, there's also time that I have to spend in spreadsheets with expenses and income. There's time on Facebook and Instagram, and there's so much where you could spend all day. I could spend all day on YouTube, and some days I have, but the geckos have to come first. So that's my top priority, geckos and isopods. And then finding the time somewhere to do the social media and the bookkeeping and inventory control and things like that. Business is business, and this is no different than any other business, and you just have to prioritize the different activities in the day. There's just not enough time with especially two people.
Rick wants to know, what is one goal you have for 2020 with regards to your breeding projects?
2020, and I think I'm if I'm reading that correct, I'm thinking that you probably mean which gecko would I like to breed, but I'm going to be a little bit more high level with that. And what I'd like to do in 2020 is, and I've said this over and over and over to some of the big breeders, is I think we need to, I think we need to take on the responsibility as bigger breeders. I'm not a big breeder by any means, but what we need to do is start researching and finding out answers to some of the questions. Is UVB light, how beneficial is UVB lighting to geckos? So I'm going to, by the end of this year, I'm going to grab a couple of projects like that, and I'm going to run with them. And even in my smaller facility, I'm going to set up some test situations and try to figure out, what is the benefit of feeding live foods to crusted geckos, as soon as they'll take them, rather than just feeding, crusted gecko diet. Some project like that I think that the community would benefit from. So I want to take that on, that responsibility.
Okay, Barb said she started keeping isopods this summer. She's got powder orange, dwarf whites, and dwarf purples, and a wild looking gray ones with white spots. And then she wants to know what other species is good for a newbie in the hobby.
Oh, I can't suggest any more than dairy cows. Dairy cows are just a fun, easy to maintain, very active. They eat anything, and they multiply like crazy. Dairy cows, for sure. If you want to take that next step, you might want to look at Armadillidium, Maculatum, the zebras, and the clowns. But that, you probably want to be a little bit more experienced with isopods before jumping into them.
Kayla wants to know how many different species of geckos you own and breed.
Well, I'm doing an event right now where I'm listing out all the geckos that I've kept and currently keep, and I think we're right around 42, 43, and the list is not by any means at the end. It has a lot of geckos left. So currently right now I probably keep about, I would have to say 40 different species, about that. I'd have to sit back and count, I guess.
She also wanted to know how long you've been in the business. We said about 20 years. Yep. And then she says, I know Leos are temp-sexed geckos, but if I don't know what the sex is, how old are they normally before you can tell what their sex is?
Yep. You can usually tell not by looking for the testicles, for leopard geckos, but looking for pores in leopard geckos, and that comes about 4 to 5 months.
Okay, this one, Samantha asked how you got started. We talked about that, and what age were you? I don't know if you want to share that one.
Age for keeping reptiles?
Yes.
I started keeping reptiles about 20 years ago, so 40, I was 40 at the time.
What was your first reptile? You talked about that. What changed in the industry since you started?
Social media.
And what do you wish would change now?
I think social media has completely changed the reptile industry, any industry really. You just have to have your face out in front of everybody. What would I most like to change? Would have to be in social media. I wish I wish I could somehow help people understand that being positive to new keepers rather than being negative to new keepers is more of a benefit. If I'm starting to keep a leopard gecko and I ask a question, I would hope that people would understand that I'm ignorant of information, that I need to get information. Some people are just asking the questions for a quick answer. Other people are seriously looking for answers so that they can move forward with their keeping and care for their animals better. It would be a wonderful world, I guess, if on social media, whenever a new person asks a question like that, whenever anybody asks a question, if we could all answer the question with a respectful answer and a constructive answer rather than a critical answer, I think that would be just wonderful.
Casey wants to know if you have moldy MRP, will that work also or only dried MRP?
I think Casey means for isopods. I throw wet MRP in with our dubias, but I only wait until the MRP dries up to actually feed it to the isopods. So for dried, it's not going to be moldy. Any mold I would throw out.
Wands wants to know what the best food for your isopod is and what's the best one to start as a beginner.
The best food to feed isopods, I sell obviously the Supreme Isopod Chow, but I'll say over and over and over, and I put it on the back of the package, the things that you absolutely have to have for isopods is decaying wood and decaying leaves. So make sure you always have leaves and make sure that you always have decaying wood. Best beginners would isopod would probably be the powder blues or powder oranges.
Liz wants to know, are isopods comparable to dubia roaches for feeding purposes?
Oh, great question. Wonderful question. I have a better feeding response from dubias than from isopods. So I generally feed our isopods to some of the species that I know are less picky about feeding. I feed isopods to our Chondrodactylus. I probably won't feed isopods to Periodora because they're a little bit more picky, especially some of the wilder Periodora. Not Picta will take anything, but some of the others like Androyensis or Bastardi, I don't feed isopods to.
She has a collared lizard and she wants to know if you think isopods would work for that.
I would think they would work wonderfully well for that. I don't know collared lizards, so if anybody on the chat knows collards and can answer that, that'd be great.
I'm thinking we've got a few repeats in here, so I'm just kind of scanning. What do you think the 5 top geckos are for kids?
I would go back to, and this, these exotics, I would say the best gecko for Christmas and the best absolute gecko, and hopefully this was mentioned in the chat, is absolutely a crusted gecko. From a temperature requirement, room temperature, from a feeding requirement, they take the crusted gecko diet. Handleability, the only downside with a crusted gecko is that the younger ones jump a lot, and ultimately you probably are going to lose the tail. Although I don't have many crusted geckos without tails. But if you do lose the crested gecko, if a crested gecko loses its tail, it doesn't grow it back. Let's take like 2 more and let's do the big giveaway. We'll maybe do 2 more here, then jump over to YouTube and see if there's any questions there. If anybody has a question on YouTube, go ahead and ask it, and we'll jump over there in just a minute.
Okay, if you could only keep one mostly kept for appearance and one isopod predominantly for its usefulness as a part of a cleanup, what species would you choose?
Porcellio ornatus. high yellow for sure from appearance standpoint.
Usefulness.
Although it would be tough with between that and Bolivari, Porcelaria Bolivari. From usefulness, absolutely dwarf whites. I think that giant canyons are great for burrowing and breaking up the substrate, but dwarf whites are just a great cleanup crew.
Okay, do you believe that naturalistic and bioactive setups can be more beneficial to a captive bred animal compared to giving them a clean, basic environment with their essential needs being met?
So this is a real quick answer, but I'm going to make it a lot longer. But the general answer is yes, absolutely. Do I do that in our facility? Not all the time, because we have to have things as easy to maintain as we possibly can. I try to set the tanks up to benefit the animals because that's a benefit to them ultimately breeding. But also, we do have some, I would call them sterile type tanks, especially with the leopard geckos. The best case scenario is that I would have everything set up in a bioactive enclosure, but we just can't do that because we have a number of animals and it would just take forever to maintain them. Let's ask one more question. I don't know if
Yeah.
then jump over.
Unicraft says, my daughter says, thanks.
I'm sorry, who's that?
Unicraft?
Unicraft. Hi.
My daughter says, thanks for the shout out. She has a question. She's interested in breeding geckos and she has a couple crusteds that she cares for now. Her question is what info would you give to someone who is just going to start breeding?
Two things. Research. Go online and research as much information as you possibly can. Number two, probably even more important than that, find a mentor. Find somebody that has worked with the animals in the past, has had success, and actually you probably want to find 2 or 3 mentors and ask them questions. So when you get a question from somebody that, even myself, if you ask me a question, make sure that you're talking to other people to make sure that it makes sense to you. I always go back to think of the animals in the wild. What would they do in the wild? But hopefully, if you can find a mentor, that's probably going to be their basis for any information. Good.
Back over.
Let's go over to YouTube. Let's see if there's any questions there. And then we're going to do the main giveaway.
My Cresty Leaf still has her tail, and she is a great educational animal. Cassandra's telling you that.
Hi, Cassandra.
I don't see any other questions right now.
Okay, well, let's do the giveaway. This is going to be tricky because I'm going to jump over to the spreadsheet. I'm going to bring the spreadsheet up and kind of explain what's going on. So you won't see Nanette and myself. Maybe that's a good thing, especially for me. Bear with me for a second. And I'm going to grab the camera and I'll be right back. So can you check to see if this looks okay on YouTube? So I'm going to see if I can show the spreadsheet here and what I've done. I've put all of the different entries into a spreadsheet, and there's about 360 numbers here. Get all the way down to the bottom so we can verify this information. Hopefully this is coming through on YouTube. So there's 397. Hopefully you can all see that. So what I'm going to do is ask Nanette to hold the camera. Perfect. And I'm going to go back up to the top 397. And we start at 4. So I have a random number generator here. And I'm going to go to that. So we start at number 4. And we go to 397. And whoops. 397. And we're going to generate the number. Does that look, can everybody see this? Maybe hold it a little closer. Oops, no, not this. Yeah, hold it there. So there you go. Okay, we're going to generate the number and let's see. Okay. The winning number is 278. So I'm going to go back over to the spreadsheet and we're going to find 278. Oops. Bear with me, folks. 278 is Mike Diamond. So Mike Diamond has won the $100 Supreme Gecko gift giveaway for 2019. I'm going to set the camera back up. I'll be right back, folks. Okay, bear with me for just a second while I get this set up. Hopefully that's pretty straight. Not too bad. So Mike Diamond has won the gift giveaway. And I want to say one more time, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and hit that like button down below if you enjoyed this giveaway, if you enjoyed this question and answer session. If you want us to do more of this, let us know in the comments. If you have other questions, I'll try to get to those as well after this video, but we're going to let everybody go here in just a second. Thank you very, very much for all the support in 2019 again. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Nanette, any final questions? No?
Thanks for coming. It was nice. It was fun talking to everybody.
It was a blast. Next live session, live stream that we do, we'll make sure that we kind of cover the chat a little bit better. This was more kind of covering those questions that everybody left on the video. But thank you very much, everyone. Really, really appreciate it. Good night.
Merry Christmas.